Good afternoon, beautiful people. This is your host, Matthew, Day and Night Podcast. We got another good topic for y'all. Okay, so this one might be a little controversial. This may rub some people the wrong way, but as always, I like to bring truth and I like to bring things that's going to challenge you inside and outside. So the topic is, should there be a requirement met before being a parent? So as always, like, subscribe, comment. We appreciate those that continue to watch the show, and we appreciate those that are comment. So as always, beautiful people, keep the comments coming. Your thoughts becomes your belief, and your belief creates your reality. All right, Mark, what you got? What you got?
The same, just appreciate everybody for checking us out. Viewers that, the regulars, like you said, the ones that's always leaving comments, like, subscribe, and share. And I have, friends that I keep telling me they watch it. So I'm gonna keep telling y'all, every now and then leave a comment and just let us know what y'all input is, what y'all feel about, the topic. So on that note, let's get it started. I'm ready because, like you said, I'm gonna get a lot of pushback on what I'm gonna have to say about this topic today. But like you said, this is the reason why we do this. So everybody, voice their opinion, and we get different point of views because it's good to have everybody's point of view on this. So STS guys, stay focused, trust your process, and stay consistent. I was about to say, where'd you go? Yeah, that was it. I got nothing else.
Okay, I'm looking at the other screen. All right, so like I was saying, this one may rub some people the wrong way. So I don't know if y'all remember. I don't know if you remember, Mark. I was telling you that I'm working now as a customer service rep with Disabled Veteran Services or Disabled Veteran. Yeah. So I have talked to at least over 1,000 people within the last 3 months, and it like is shocking with some of the level of incompetency of some of the adults that I've been speaking to. So that kind of led me into wanting to talk about this. I feel as though it's a topic that kind of get brushed over, and I think is evident if people actually really do stop and take the time and look at it. Um, it's something that I believe is part of the reason why the world is in the state that it's in. More so here in the United States because it's like children or having children. There's people that's having children that shouldn't have children. And one of my favorite sayings is garbage in, garbage out. Now, that may sound kind of harsh, but that's just how I see it because it's just basically everything is being recycled. And unfortunately, when it comes to parenting, a lot of us, myself included, was not prepared. I'm not even going to lie. In my mind, before I had children, my mindset was I'm not going to have children until I'm in my 30s. Then I'm well established. I done did all the stuff I wanted to do, and that was honestly like my mindset. But being immature and irresponsible, I wound up having a child at 26. I wasn't prepared mentally. I wasn't prepared physically, spiritually, financially, and I feel as though that caused, you know, issues in the beginning because I wasn't prepared as a person and as a man. So in the beginning, it may have not affected the children, but now that they're older, as I look back, not that they're bad children, they're all doing amazing things. But could things be a little bit different? Yes. So I'm going to try to keep everything in context. So I have like 7 categories. And everything that I look at in life, I always look at it as a total picture, meaning like 360 degrees. And a lot of people sometimes can cover a certain area of something, but then be lacking in something else. So for me, I believe everything we do, we should be 100% complete in every aspect. And So, like I said, it's like 7 topics we're going to talk about. So, the first one is emotional readiness, financial stability, health, relationship stability, legal considerations, parenting skills and knowledge, and support systems. Okay, so becoming a parent is a significant responsibility, and often it's a deeply personal decision between the individual, or even if you have a couple, or as couples, it's something that people should take in consideration. Is this something that I'm ready to do? So the first one I want to talk about is emotional readiness. Um, so the best way I look at it is, like I said, when I had children, I wasn't emotionally ready. And I feel as though that I could have been a better dad and a better parent had I been emotionally ready, because if you break it down, what is emotion? Being emotionally ready is to care and support a child in crucial times, being prepared for challenges that comes up, rather when they're little or when they're older or teenagers or whatever the case is. Now, like everything, I always look at it as being relative. So some may agree with this, others may not. So when it comes to parenting, it seems as though there's no structure to it and there's no protocol. It's like most people, well, I'm going to raise my child how I feel as though it's the best way to raise them. Or what most of us do, we reach back and we look at how our parents raised us. And we kind of take some of that and incorporate it into how we're raising our children. In all seriousness, it may not be the best way or most effective way. And that's where I come up with the garbage in, garbage out, or recycling, because we may be raising our children ineffectively the same way we were raised, but we're thinking that's the right way. Because if we seriously just take time and think about it, that's the one thing that we do that we're not trained to do or taught how to do. We're not taught how to be a parent. We're not trained how to be a parent. That's just something that most people believe that's innate, and you just supposed to know how to do that. And unfortunately, that's not the case. That's like the furthest from the truth. It's like the 7 things that I listed. You got to be emotionally ready. You got to be healthy, as far as within yourself, mentally, spiritually, physically, and everything. Relationship stability. So it's more to it than just one aspect. And I'm going to use like 2 examples, and they are celebrities. The only reason why I'm using celebrities is because they're in the public eye. So everybody sees these people, opposed to like a relative or a neighbor. You might see them come and go, but you don't see it as much as, celebrities are put right out in front of us. So the 2 that comes to my mind is LeBron James and Deion Sanders. Now, from the outside, most people are like, oh man, they are amazing parents. They're involved. They always supporting their children. They're supporting them physically, not physically, financially, emotionally. And most people look at that, that's a great parent, but they could be lacking in other areas. We don't know. And quite frankly, a lot of that they're going to show us is what they want us to see. So we don't know what real type of parent they are behind closed doors. Now, I'm not taking anything away from them, but we really don't know as far as what other areas they may be lacking in. So that's just what I want to just put out, just to touch on a little bit, and then we're actually going to get into those 7 characteristics, so to speak. And I'm interested to hear what you have to say, Mark.
Yeah, that like you said, this is going to be a lot of pushback because this is like you said, this is all relative. Everybody's going to have their own point of view. I don't think everybody's going to disagree, but there will be some, because one thing you said that I totally agree with is we all feel like we have it figured out on the way we should raise our kids. And I watch a lot of these young adults because I work with a young group, so I always look, and I used to always say, man, these damn generation nowadays don't know what the hell they're doing, and always ragging on them. And then I think we talked about it last week, and I talked to someone at work about it, is actually we gotta step back and realize that we can't fault the kids on how they are because it's kind of cause and effect on how we raised them. And it's not always how we raised them, it's how we act. Because one thing I always remember dad said that resonated with me is it's not what you tell them, it's what you do. Because most of the time kids gonna watch and mimic what you do as opposed to what you say. So I think the emotional one is a big one for me, just because of my own personal experience. Like you said, I had my first kid at 20. I had Keisha at 20. I was not mentally ready. Damn sure wasn't financially ready. Emotionally, I wasn't ready. I was a kid myself, and I had to figure it out. And I was literally learning on the fly. And I would call dad, or dad would call me, and I always ask him, like, man, these kids don't want to listen, they don't want to do that. He'll always laugh and say, you can't never satisfy a kid. Y'all wasn't never happy, but all you gotta do is just keep doing your best and know that what you teach them, they'll get it, and usually it'll be later in life. They're not gonna get it right away. So the emotional aspect, for me personally, it was not good because the mom and I was not on good terms. So I think that plays a big part too, because the parents is at each other and they not in a civil way. That's going to reflect on the kids, even though we could be somewhat good parents to them. But again, I think kids see what we do action wise, and that emotion, just seeing emotion or the negativity towards each other, meaning the parents, plays a big part. So I think the emotion is going to be my biggest one. The other ones I agree with, but the emotional one is very important because it has so many dynamics to it. It can be the reason why a kid can be very aggressive, meaning very outspoken. If the parents are good with each other, just always happy, that's going to reflect. Or it could be they at each other, so they kid has a lot of anger in them, and they mad, and you don't wonder why they always angry. It's because what they're surrounded by. So I believe emotionally, the kids are a product of their environment. So I really think that emotionally, like you said, when can you be ready? I think past experience from the way we was raised is a thin line. I agree with that. Where is that always the right way? Because I ain't gonna lie, I used to always say I'm gonna raise them just like dad raised us. That's different time, different era. We can, as far as morally, I would say the morals should be the same. If you had morals in place from your parents, I think you can transition that to your kids. But certain things, dynamic wise, other ways is different. Like these kids growing up in a technology era, so it's totally different from when we grew up. So the discipline, I think that will be different. Emotionally, kids are exposed to a lot more because of social media. So we got to emotionally be there for them a different way. So I think it is a different way of raising your kids as opposed when you was raised, because we grew up in an era where we all say old school, but I had a friend tell me you can't always raise them the way you was raised because they're not going to get it. And you think it's the right way, but it's not necessarily not. You got to be able to adjust and do it accordingly. So, but that's for right now. Yeah.
Okay, so this is what my thinking is. It may sound crazy. I know some people might push back on this, but I really feel as though there should be a requirement or a law. Now, the law might be stretching it just a little bit, but if we seriously think about it, everything that we do, we have to have some form of test, whether it's a background check, if you're trying to get a job, whether it's a credit check, if you're trying to get a car or a house, there's always something that has to show that we have the responsibility and capability of either performing that job or maintaining a house or, maintaining a car. So to me, something as important as raising children and being a parent, we should have something in place, whether it's a checklist or a requirement that has to be met. And I'll get into the other stuff later. But as far as the emotional part, I think there's definitely should be some form of testing before, you're allowed to become a parent. Now, where it gets tricky at is you got so many people out there that's having sex before, the age of 18. So when the law comes in, if you actually have sex and you get somebody pregnant, it would be a penalty. Now, I'm not going to go as far as putting anybody in jail, but it definitely should be some form of penalty or something that's going to hold people accountable and responsible to the extent of, okay, I'm not trying to pay no heavy ass fine. Not that that should be the only reason, but at least in the back of your mind, you're thinking, man, if I do this, either my parents going to have to pay, I have to pay, but it'll make you think a little bit quicker before you pull your pants down and pull it out and stick it in something and release. So I just feel as though something definitely should be in place. Just going back with the emotional readiness part, like you said, you weren't ready emotionally. I said I wasn't ready emotionally. And like I said, when I was listening to some of these parents call in, and some of these people like have no clue. And, forgive me, I'm not, dogging out anybody that has learning capabilities or any type of impairments. And I don't know if these people I don't know if they still use the term retarded, but the speech was off. And it was like, they had to do this for my kids. And I'm like, wow, here it is. This person have some type of learning disability or whatever the case is, and they have children. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying because this person may be impaired in a certain type of way that he can't raise a child. But as I was saying earlier, for me, it's the totality of it. It's 360 degrees. Yeah, they can be, excelling or succeeding in emotional readiness. They can provide the support and emotional support for their children, but then they're lacking in the health category of it because they don't have the competency really to barely function for themselves. So how are they able to function enough to take care of a child? So I just think there should be a criteria that you have to meet every area at that 360 degrees. And you have to, I don't want to put numbers and stuff on it, but you should definitely get past like a 70% if we're going to put numbers on it, or 80%, 90%, or whatever in each category before you're allowed to have a child. I think that will help prevent so many children having children and people having children and don't really want to have children, or people having children and just forgetting about them, And I know there's a couple of athletes and entertainers. Country Wayne is one. He was just bragging the other day on a social media podcast about how many children he has. I think he said he has like 9 or 10. And then what's the other one? Nick Cannon. Shaq. I know the Bible says be fruitful and multiply and all that good stuff. But at the same time, if you're not emotionally ready, if you're not financially ready, if you're not healthy, mentally, relationship wise, as far as with your partner, legal wise, and having parenting skills and a good support system, why are you having so many children? Back in the day, you remember that the people will have children because they ain't have to work because they get what? Child support. Not child support, welfare.
Welfare, yeah.
So they will have all type of children running around and stuff like that and not able to take care of them. So I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as having something in place, having it be rather test requirements or actually having it being legal.
Yeah, that's a good one. But I'm sitting here thinking I got so much to say. I'm gonna try not to steal the whole show or the time, not the show, but the time. I'm gonna go backwards real quick before I speak on the requirements, because that's a slippery slope. Because here in America, we have these rights and all that. It'd be, to me, I would have to sit here and think, how will we enforce that? Because so many dynamics to that. Because I agree, and I was talking earlier saying that maybe they should be like China, where they limit how many to a family. But the problem is, there's not even a lot of families that it's just single with people running around having kids by everybody, each other. So to me, I don't know how you would go about that to be able to enforce that, manage that, because to me that would be so hard because there's so many dynamics to it. But I do believe that it should be a requirement. And you just said it a minute ago, how some of these teenagers and young people run around and have kids all over the place, and then they don't even want to work, and they let the government give them the welfare. So now taxpayers got to pay take care of the kids. And 9 times out of 10, they're not even doing what they should be doing. So now they just having kids left and right because they know they're going to be financially taken care of. And I feel like that should change. That should be the requirement right there, where if you're not working, if you're not doing something to better yourself, you can only allow 2 kids. And I know that's going to be hard to enforce that, but I think it should be some kind of cap on that, because I think that's where it's out of control, is where teenagers having kids. Then some people may say, well, then they're just going to go get an abortion. That's a whole nother subject. So it's just hard for me personally, to say what should be done. I do believe it should be requirements. And how going about it, that was a little bit tougher. But what I was going to speak on, when you were saying about the emotion, and I'm sitting here thinking, we all going to think that I don't think there's no manual on it. I think nobody's ever ready, because I believe you could be 30 years old and you think you're ready because you've been through life and you financially sound, but having a kid, and who all have kids, you already know, you could be 30, 40 years old. That's still going to be a challenge because there's so much that you got to put into it. So I believe you could be financially part would be maybe the one that's going to be a little easier, because you have the money in place to financially be able to provide for them. But the emotional part, I don't know if you can ever be ready. You could be 40 years old and be great with your nieces and nephews and never had kids, but you get your own kid, it's just totally different, because now you with them 24/7. You don't give them back. And then that takes a lot. You stressed out. How do you handle that when you stressed out and your kid getting on your last nerve? It seems like that's when they want to talk to you the most. So to me, I don't know if you would ever be ready. I think you could be somewhat prepared, but I don't think you'd be ready for the actual initial dealing with the everyday life of kids. But the other thing I was going to speak on that resonates with me, it's a young lady. I should say young lady. She's 21, and she just started working at my job. And she was saying, yeah, I got to take care of my little brother. And I was like, oh, where's your parents? So the parents aren't there. I'm not going to tell too much of her business, but long story short, she's raising her little brother that's 14 because the parents aren't there. And it was funny listening to her, because she sounded like a parent. Like, I gotta go home and make sure he eat, and like literally being responsible. And this is her little brother, her sibling, and she's taking on that parenting role. And she speaks very mature. Like, she sounds like a grown person talking about their kid. And she's like, yeah, I gotta make sure he eat, and he eats this, and I don't eat because I gotta make sure he eat first. I'm like, damn, girl, you taking on a lot to be 21. She's like, yeah, but you gotta grow up sometime. Sometimes it's earlier than you expect. And I mean, I don't know how she is outside of work. I mean, this is just a conversation we had. I'm not saying she's going there beating the kid up or anything, but I'm just saying, for the simple fact that this young lady is 21 years old and she's working and she's providing for her little brother, because unfortunately an incident happened with the parents that she had to take on the parental rights. So I do personally believe that some people just built to be able to be nurturers. So I will kind of slay to the right and say, yeah, some out there that are just naturally born to be caregivers and nurturing, and they haven't even experienced their own life yet. So I will say that, just to be fair. But across the board, like you say, the totality, most people, if you ain't emotionally ready and you acting immature yourself, and this is where I have a big problem, where I watch and I see how adults act. And I'm like, damn, you got kids and this is how you act? So I'm asking myself, well, how do they act if you act like that? So that's why I'm big on action instead of what you teach them and tell them every day. You can have the best lines and best speeches, but if you acting plumb fool, are you really raising your kid right? Because they watching you and do how you disrespectful to other people, or see how you manage money and you just crazy with your money and not using it wisely. That kid gonna pick up on that. And you can sit there and tell them, don't do as I do as I say. I think that's the worst rule. Do as I say, not as I do. I think that's where a lot of us as parents make a mistake, because we feel we grown, we adults, we can do this. Well, yeah, you can, but if you doing it recklessly, that kid gonna pay attention to that. So I think, just on the emotional part again, that plays a big part. But the requirements, yeah, I agree. But damn, I'm sitting here thinking like, what could you do? How could you enforce that? Like, how could you manage to keep people from? I mean, the penalty, I like that. The fee, but I mean, shit. So many people got bills now they don't even pay. You know what I mean? Like, so if you don't pay the fee, what's the next consequence if you don't pay? You know, you late on your payment. What are you gonna do? Take the kid? So I don't know. It's a good idea. I'm just trying to figure out how would that go about. And I'm stuck on that one. I ain't gonna lie. But I do agree it should be some kind.
Okay. I definitely have solutions, but I don't want to get into that. But something you said that do make sense, and I was thinking about this earlier. Like, and think I said this to you before. To me, the parent is probably the most challenging thing to do in life because we're always learning.
Right.
You have to know how to be a parent when they're children, when they're babies and infant. When they become young adults, we're still learning how to be a parent and parenting an adult. So it's something that's definitely you're always learning. I don't think it's 100% guarantee that you're going to be a perfect parent, but I still feel as though that there are certain things that has to be in place. And I was thinking that maybe testing before you graduate, or if it's a citywide testing, but definitely as far as just getting a sense on the person's emotional stability and mental stability and financial. I think those are things that we can definitely regulate because you can do a credit check. And if that person got bills that they're not paying for, you go out here and have some children, there's going to be repercussions behind that. And same thing with mental health. If you don't have the capacity to function as an adult, it would be illegal for you to reproduce. And I know it sounds bad, but for me, I have to look at the totality of it and what's being put out into society.
Right.
So I want to touch on one of the comments that one of the viewers posted. And it's Christina. She said that she didn't raise her boys the way she was raised. And she was a younger mom, and she thanked God for them because they saved her. And as she also said, she had to raise her younger siblings while her parents were out doing whatever. And I got pregnant at a young age. So, and don't take offense to this, Christina. So you're kind of proving my point. And that's my exact point, is because you was held responsible. You took the initiative to raise your children while your parents was doing what the hell they wanted to do. That's exactly my point. So you shouldn't have had to went through that. And that's what I'm looking at as far as trying to prevent, someone like you, to have to raise their children, I mean, your siblings, because your mom and dad is doing what the hell they want to do, And then the other side to that, you said your children saved you. And again, I look at that as being not such a good situation because that tells me that you weren't emotionally ready, you weren't mentally ready, and your children, even though they saved you, but it took them to get you to that point to wake up, I guess, if that makes sense. And that's, to me, that's scary because what if it wasn't children like yours that was able to turn that light switch on? And then these children was badass children. They're out there, in gangs and stuff like that, or they're robbing, they're stealing because, hell, mom don't know what she's doing. She ain't emotionally ready. She ain't financially, I'm going to do what I want to do. So you was fortunate enough to where you had children to where they was able to open your eyes. But what about those that aren't able to do that? So that's what I'm looking at. There's cases out there, where there's children that come out to be great and to do amazing things, because these parents weren't who they were supposed to be. But for me, I don't think we should just rely on an anomaly as far as, okay, there may be some, but just from my perspective, again, talking to these people, there's more out there that's not parents that's not ready. than those that are ready. So I don't want to beat that up, and I hope you don't take that as me beating on you or anything like that. I'm just looking at it from, as a third eye, so to speak. So now I want to touch on the financial part of it. Financial stability is just being able to raise a child, basically having the capability of doing so. That's for health reasons, educational, clothing, food, and especially nowadays, with the way things are crazy expensive. I don't know how people are doing it. And just to sit here and think, and I honestly would look like, man, who in the world would want to raise a child in this time, in this day and age, the way, things are. So I think we already kind of touched on that. Mark, you touched on it as far as, how you got people, young kids out here having children and they aren't able to pay for it. And then they're staying at home with mom and dad. And, then they're going out doing whatever. And then the kids just left back home with the grandparents and stuff like that. So that's another dynamic that I think can cause an issue if we don't have something in place.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you said something earlier, and is thinking while you was talking, as far as requirements, it should be on all levels, phases, like you said. Financially, they got to prove that they financially stable. Emotionally, and then what's the other one? Emotionally, financial. I think those are the two main ones. But on the financial part, that's a big thing because that plays such a big role as much as the emotion. Actually, hand in hand, they kind of tie into each other. Because if you financially not stable, you're going to emotionally become stressed out. You're going to become a little bit more impatient. So you want not have to pay. We know you got to be patient with your kids, especially when they're young. So if you not be able to make the money to pay your bills and you got to get him diapers or get him clothes or he needs this for school, that brings so much stress on you. Now you stressed out. You're not making enough money. You upset, and sometimes, not all the time, but unfortunately, who gets the backlash for that? Your kid, because even though they're not doing it purposely, because the parent is so stressed out, they're going to usually release all that stress onto the kid. Now you're not raising your kid right. You're kind of having animosity towards them because you kind of feel like the kid is the reason why you're in this position. But if you would have thought about it before you had the kid and realized, am I able to take care of this 10, 5 years? That's stuff I like to do. So why am I going to put myself in a situation where I can't get what I want? Now I got to give my kid first, which you should, but just on a simple meaning of some people that think that way, where they want to buy this and buy that. And I still know some people that buy most expensive things for themselves, and the kid get left with the crumbs.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, that ain't right. If you didn't want to do that, then you shouldn't be having kids. So I think financially, yeah, for one, you can't afford it, you shouldn't be having kids. Two, if you can afford it, but you still kind of selfish and you want to do for you first, or whatever the kid get, you give them. That's not good. And then the other part, which is kind of slippery slope, is I know a lot of parents where they didn't have much growing up. So the classic saying is, I'm gonna give them everything that I didn't have. So they just overwhelm them with gifts, buy them this, give them that. So now they just giving them everything they want. And I think that could be dangerous because now you're teaching them you can get whatever you want. And now feel like they're entitled because they ain't working for it because they're a kid. You don't want them going with less because you had less when you was growing up. So I get it. But again, I'm not saying it's totally wrong. I just think we as parents got to be careful when we have that mentality. Well, I'm gonna give them everything that I didn't have. If you want to give them anything you didn't have, make sure they have education instilled for them. Make sure that if something's to happen to you, they are financially taken care of. Because to me, that would be more important for in case of a rainy day, as opposed to I want them to have Jordans on and the fly sneaker outfit, which is cute. That's nice, but you're spoiling them so much to where you're missing that moral of it's nice to have nice things, but you work for it, earn it, you deserve it. So I'm real on the fence when parents say that I'm gonna give them everything I didn't have, and then financially because you can, you're raising your kid financially because you can, and you're missing out on other aspects of what parenting is, which is teaching them right from wrong, teaching them to have standards and morals and guidelines, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so I want to touch on another comment. Okay, and this comment is coming from AJ. She says um, she think there should be education and testing to be a parent or to get public money such as food stamps and Medicaid. I 100% agree. And that's one of the things that I was thinking about too, as far as have some form of testing or something put in place, because it's just too wild. It's too wide open. I think more so now it's more wide open than it was when we was growing up, but it's starting to get out of hand. Um, so now I want to go back on something you said as far as like with women, women are more equipped, like you were saying, to raise children in a sense of nurturing. But again, I don't want that to be just like the only thing that's kind of is involved with raising children. Yes, nurturing is a part of it, but that's not everything. Like you can have someone, there's some parents or some mothers out there that are excellent nurturers. You know, they just had an innate ability to take care of children, but then the financial piece comes in. You know, they got had children early. It was messing with a knucklehead and he left. So now she's financially strapped and she's not able to take care of them the way she's supposed to and want to financially, but they're taken care of, emotionally and in other ways. So that's why I look at as far as like the total picture opposed to just certain aspects, even as men. And for myself, I felt as though I was a good provider, but I was lacking in other areas, and still to this day, it's other areas that I'm lacking in. And I'm still, working on it. But the children are the ones that's suffering because they get in the one piece of it as far as the nurturing, then they get the other piece of it as far as the provision part, as far as from the father. But then what about the other things? The actual parenting skills, and knowledge of being how to parent. So then they're lacking in that, and it kind of brings them out unstable and not balanced. So that's how I see that, and I feel as though that should be addressed. All right, so now we kind of tackled the financial part of it. Now health. So both physical and mental health are the important factors to consider before becoming a parent. Ensuring that you are in good health can contribute to a smoother pregnancy and better ability to take care of a child. Now, I think that part is a little bit more, I hate to say this, on the female than it is the male, because women, if they're not 100% healthy physically, that can cause issues for, the childbirth, even while they're carrying children. So that's something that they have to take in consideration. There's some women or teenagers, young adults that may have issues, that may have, lupus or cancer or, any of those other diseases out there, and their life could be shortened. And that's something, in my opinion, that has to be taken in consideration. Even though I have these ailments, should I still have a child? It may be a possibility that I may not live long enough to even, see them get older or even half their childhood. So I think that is something that has to be taken in consideration when it comes to just the physical aspect of it for the woman, because they're carrying it. But even for the man, if he's dealing with certain things and he knows that it's a possibility that he may not be here, that's something that they have to, talk about, or that individual have to look within themselves. Do I really want to bring a child into this world knowing that it's a possibility they'll be fatherless or they'll be motherless, and that's something that has to be taken into consideration. In the mental health aspect, what I was speaking of earlier, and this is not a knock on anybody with mental health. You may have somebody with this manic depressive, schizophrenia, what's the other one? Bipolar, personality disorder, or whatever the case is. If you know that you have those things, to me, that should be seriously taken into consideration before having a child, because not only it may be passed down to them, will you be able to actively raise this child knowing that you have these mental issues? And then some people want to use that as an excuse or as a crutch. Well, I had this mental disability, so that's why certain things happen, because the way it happens because of this mental disability. So why even have a child if you know that? So don't use it as a crutch. You know what I mean? So that's another aspect as far as the health side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the mental health part is trumps everything. I mean, I think that's the golden child. That's the baby because that kind of dictates everything that happens in your life is your mental. Like you said, if you have stress, if you have anxiety, if you have bipolar, if you have a kid and you have episodes, you're not going to be able to function the way you should for the simple fact you're going through those situations. So to me, if you know, like you say, if you know you have any kind of mental health problems, it to me it's a self evaluation. You got to ask yourself. But I think the reason why it doesn't, because we all met someone that we think is that person. You feel that that's the one you want, or it just could be a oops. Guess what happened? Because a lot of people have oops. They don't want to admit it, but I know a guy, a buddy of mine, he had an oops, and he's like, "Damn, man." I was like, "Well, you should have known. You can't oops if you know the consequence behind that." So I think it's just so many different dynamics. But if you mentally like that, I feel like that's where you do need to have that instilled the requirements instilled, because if you go primarily off of your own self will, how many people are going to really say, "Nah, I'm not going to do it"? I mean, it is a lot. Don't get me wrong. I know it's a lot of people that won't have kids because of all the stuff we speaking on. So I'm going to say it is a good amount that are already on that level. But for the ones that's not, honestly, I'm sitting here thinking, will we really expect them to say, "I'm not going to have kids"? So I think that's where the requirements have to be in place,
Mhm.
because if we do take it on our own, I don't think it's going to change. I think it's going to continue the way it is, for the simple fact that we're not going to look at ourselves that way and say, "No, I'm not ready," because we have that little ego that thinks that we can, or "I'm not that other person. I'm not like her, or I'm not like him. I knew that ain't going to happen to me," and they're going to do it anyway. So that's where I feel like the mental health, that's the one that needs the criteria of a requirement. Because if you have any kind of issues, I guarantee it's gonna be a struggle raising that kid because of your mental issues.
Mhm.
So that's not putting a knock on anybody. That's just being honest to the situation. So I feel like that's the one that needs to be highlighted as the number one priority as far as requirements. Because the health physically, that's another one. Because if you can't physically work or physically be able to take care of your kid, that kid's going to suffer. So I think that's without saying that the physical, you have to be physically capable, or you have some people that abuse alcohol, abuse drugs, and that's going to keep them from functioning right. So yeah, I mean that's number two. Number one is the mental. But yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's definitely a requirement that needs to be in place. How? I'm still thinking on that one. How would we do that? Because I'm thinking, like, let's say we do have one, like you said, you gotta take a test. If you fail, then what? Oh, you can't
Can't
have
have it.
kids. So I'm like, what do they do? It's like go and get bootleg movies and bootleg. Somebody gonna find a way. There's always people to find loopholes. And I mean, I hate to use China, and I was trying not to go there because I know they real strict on their requirements. Like they have a law in place. You can only have what, two boys? I think one
Yeah.
boy. So dare I say to be like China, but and they still are overpopulated, but
Right.
I just think they have something in place though to kind of manage that. I
Mhm.
don't know if that'll work in America because of our land of options and the
Yeah.
free will. So I don't know, how that will work. But to me, honestly, I think is we all got to have self reflect. self what's the word I'm looking for?
Introspection.
Yeah, you gotta look evaluation of yourself and ask yourself.
Mhm.
But then that goes back to like I was saying, most people not going to say be honest and be like, nah, I ain't ready. You know, I wasn't ready when I was 20. That was the oops. And I'm not being mean. I love my girls, my son. They beautiful. They doing good, but it wasn't planned. Now, actually, my son was planned. I'm not gonna lie. Edith and I, we planned. We wanted a boy. We had a boy.
Mhm.
So that sometimes happens. So you can plan, but I wasn't financially still ready though. That part I wasn't. I
Mhm.
was ready to have a son because I felt like, oh, I want to have a son to continue our name. And I think most guys think like that, where they want to have that son to continue on to
Right.
carry that your last name and have a legacy. So I think that plays a part too. A
Yeah.
lot of guys that wants to have kids or have that son so they can carry that name. So they may not be ready, but they have that mentality of thinking that
Okay. I want to touch on a couple of these comments. Okay. So KJ, she said, what about people who decide to have children knowing the child will not have the father or the other parent, such as the virtual pregnancy? So I think that's
way.
basically what we're talking about. Uh, for me, anyway, is reason why there should be requirements in place or some type of law to prevent stuff like that. But it's just like Mark brought up a perfect point, is that this kind of goes in line with the whole abortion thing. It's like you're violating that person's constitutional right. And I
Mhm.
think that's would be the biggest pushback and the biggest outcry is you're violating our constitutional right. We should be able to have children if we want to. So I don't know. I think it's going to have to be some type of research and some type of data that's going to have to prove that um, being that so many unprepared parents are out here, that's why you have crime or you have certain issues with, you know, young adults is because of the result of ill or unprepared parent. So it's going to have to be some type of research proving that in order for that to actually take place, because it's really based off of perspective. In my opinion, you know, if a parent is not taught a certain way or raised a certain way, that they'll be a great parent. I just feel as though it's better to be prepared than unprepared. Maybe as far as going to a test or making it illegal, maybe that's a little bit too far, but I feel as though things should definitely be in place. It should be some type of requirement that all these have to be met before having a child. And then the other comment she made is, do you agree with someone giving up their children if they are not of ready, or should they heal themselves and raise their own child? That's a good question. Hmm. I'm curious to hear what you're going to say. I think, in a sense of, if you know that you're just not able to heal, if you know that you're not trying to better yourself and progress in the sin, then I think it'll be better off to give up your your um your rights and allow that child to be raised by somebody that's going to provide that. From that aspect, that makes sense, and I can see that. But if you're just doing it because you're weak and you're not mentally strong enough to do it, and you just taking an easy way out, no, then I think you shouldn't. So again, that's what the whole point of this conversation is so things like that won't be in question,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So Mark, I'm curious what you have to say about this, and then I want to
yeah.
touch on a relationship stability because that one is a big one.
Well, I like that comment or question. I think it was a question or comment, but I'm kind of on the fence with that one. Yes, I will say that would be the responsible, mature thing to do because if you know you're not ready and you feel like you're not going to be a good parent and you're just going to not, I hate to say neglect, but you're just not going to do what you should be to give that kid what they want. My question would be, why the hell did you had a kid in the first place? Now, again, that's just going to keep going back to, like I was saying, where you can't really tell somebody when are you ready. But if you young, let me put a age on it. If you're under 20, you just having sex being reckless. You're not being responsible. And if you go oops and have a kid, and then you realize 5 years later, oh, I don't want it, I ain't ready. That is not fair to the kid that you giving that kid up because you're not ready. You should have been thinking about that when you was inside. And I'm gonna be real blunt right now. Forgive me, y'all, but we all adults. Jay told me, pull out, put a soul on her body, but don't do that inside of her if you know you ain't ready. And I know the pull out game ain't as easy as I'm making it sound. Yeah. We all know that, man. But I'm just really being honest. I can't sit here and sugarcoat it. If you really feel like that, you shouldn't. That's why I say if you're 20 and under, I hate to say it, give them a pass, but I can see where you could go, oops, because you're very mature. You get it, you're happy, you excited, yeah, you forget about taking it out. But if you over 20, you 25, you 30, well, not 30, 25 and up, you should already know by now that this is not what I want. Then you got to take the necessary precautions. It's just that simple. I just honestly believe that would be the first step. Now, if you get past that and you do have a kid, I will say yes. If you feel like you know you're not going to be there for them, then go ahead and give it to somebody that will be a better parent. But the only thing I have with that, and I know they have a very significant, they say it's 100% proof screening when you give kids to somebody else. But how you know they're going to take care of them and do right by them? What if that kid has something that's wrong with them and it's from your DNA, and then the kid get older? Now there's other parents is dealing with it. Now they're going to have some kind of animosity because you're dealing with somebody else's kid's problems, and now they're not even treating that kid right. So is that even 100% proof to say, yeah, give them to somebody else? Because I know some people that have been foster kids where they had great parents, and I know some that the foster parents was assholes to them. So it's a catch-22. I mean, at the end of the day, is anything 100 proof? Not really. Is some things better than others? Yes. But to me, end of the day, it's going to sound easy coming out my mouth, but we have to make rational self-reflection, to be honest. Now, I know if you're in the moment, you ain't thinking about all that. But if you're seeing somebody and you've been with them for a while, and y'all are being intimate, you got to be able to say, no, I ain't getting her ass pregnant. Or I don't want to get pregnant by his ass. He ain't got shit really going on. Then you guys take the necessary precautions. Again, I know it sounds easy, but it shouldn't be that hard either.
Okay. I can dig it. I can dig it. All right. So now we move it on to our next one, which is relationship stability. So planning to become a parent with a partner, having a stable and supportive relationship is important. Open communication, shared values, commitment to parenting are essential for providing a healthy environment for a child. So this kind of touches on what you were just talking about a minute ago, AJ. Now, this one is big for me because this is what, and this may sound hypocritical because I had 5, and like I said earlier,
hey, I'm just going to say this real quick, man. You're going to be in trouble later, but go ahead. Because you keep saying AJ.
Oh, I'm sorry, KJ. I'm sorry, KJ. All right, so
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right, so like I said, it may sound hypocritical, but I already said that I wasn't ready when I had children. So to me, that's the biggest part of it, is having the right partner, because that was one of my biggest issues with my ex, is we weren't compatible. And even though I knew it, I was still being selfish, thinking about me and what I wanted. I'm not going to get into why I chose to stay, but it was selfish reasons why I did. And knowing that we weren't compatible, like I said, my children are all doing great things. They turned out to be beautiful young people. So I was blessed in the sense of they didn't turn out to be hellions. But I'm talking about the ones where they aren't lucky enough to where the children came out to be productive, citizens. So just knowing when you're talking to somebody, when you're dating them, okay, these are the things that I like. These are my values. These are my principles. These are my morals. But hell, if you're 20 something, you don't even know what you want. You don't really, do you really know what your values and principles are at that age? So it's a challenge to know within yourself and then finding that in somebody else. And my belief is as we grow into sin, we shouldn't be the same person we were 10, 15 years ago. Our mindset should not be the same. So all that stuff have to be taken into consideration when you're picking your partner. And when you pick that partner, I know it sounds like the perfect thing, the perfect movie type of story of how you're supposed to meet somebody and y'all perfectly match for each other and you fall in love and you get married and have children, blah, blah, blah. It sounds good. But in our actuality, that's the way it should be. So that one right there, you can't really regulate. That's more so like you always been, been saying here recently, is just being honest with yourself and saying like, look, I know I don't like her like that. Or I know I don't like him like that. Do I see myself being in a long-term relationship and raising children with this person? And that's kind of got off sidetrack. And that was my issue was when we got divorced, we couldn't see eye to eye on raising our children. So she had one belief, I had one belief. So it was like, okay, the child gets stuck with it. Mama's raising me one way, daddy is raising me another way. And that causes, again, I was blessed in the sense of mine didn't turn out to be a certain way. But some children, they rebel off of that or they turn out to be terrible people because they have no stability within parenting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what, that one, I didn't even think about that, but that's a perfect one, what you just stated as far as with relationships on picking the right partner. I think that one falls right in the top five for the simple fact, yeah, we all have our reasons why we think that partner might be the one. And I kind of put it on the women. I know I'm kind of be one sided, but women tend to fall and get caught up a little bit quicker. And then some guys do too. So I'm not saying men aren't like that either, but we tend to think that is the right person, but we're being delusional a little bit to not sit back and look and then ask ourselves, like you said, do I really see myself having kids with this person? Like, she lazy or she do this. I love her, but certain things, I don't know if I want her taking care of my kid like that. And if you say that and you still do it, then you're being irresponsible and you're not being true to yourself because you're thinking, I guess, hopefully she'll change and it won't be like that. But I think that's a big part. You have to be able to look at your partner and say, is this someone I can have kids with? And a lot of us tend to do that when we think we are or that person is. Now, my daughter's mom, I'm not trying to put her out on the bus because I don't do that. But like you said, her and I are night and day. We're totally different. She's a little bit more hood, and I remember Jay telling me, like, what was, him, now, I ain't trying to say nothing to be sounding disrespectful. I'm not trying to discredit her. So I'm not going to say anything like that. But just put it that way. We had two different ways of raising our girls. And we always went back and forth. And it's funny because with me, they always saw me as a square growing up because I never smoked in front of them. I never drank in front of them. I never cussed in front of them. So they thought I was just some old square dad that was corny and wasn't funny or nothing because I always believed that I didn't want them to see that part of me because I didn't want them to say that, okay, this is what I want to do too. But then Jay, one thing Jay did that I always thought was good is he allowed, and rest his soul, nobody judged, because we all do stuff we shouldn't do. But he used to let the girls drink with us. And his thought process was, I'd rather them drink with us than somebody out there in the streets that's irresponsible. So he said, if you're going to do something or you let your kids do something, you do it with them. Now, I know a lot of people might be like, well, that's just not being responsible, or that's being irresponsible, and that's not teaching them the right way. I agree, but then I'm going to disagree to say, if you do it to present it to them and be like, look, if you're going to try this with me, because I'm going to watch out and I'm going to take care and make sure you don't do nothing stupid, because your friends are not going to do that. So I kind of agree. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you every day smoking with them and drinking, is that's different. Now you're trying to be a friend. But if you do it once to introduce it to them, then do that. So I'm getting back on subject. So with me, I never done any of that with the girls. So they deemed me as, oh, he don't do nothing. He's a square. So when they finally found out I did all that, they was like, oh my God, Dad, I didn't know you drink. I didn't know you even cuss. So my point is, and their mom was a little bit more free with her mouth and smoking and stuff. And I don't know what she always did in front of them because we was in separate households. So I'm not going to sit here and make it seem like she was doing all that in front of them, but she just had a way of raising them than I did. So we always combated with each other. So I think we made it work. They all grown. They very responsible young ladies and, very respectful. Like Deanna won't even cuss in front of me. So it makes me laugh that she thought I was a square because I never cuss. But if she cussed, she go, oops, I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to cuss. So it tells me that they, even though they were separate households, they did get some values out of it. But I believe that is important that we have to make sure that our partners are the one that we want to be, having kids with. Now, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna give it back to you, Matt. Now, you would say back in the day, probably if somebody had a kid, that's a red flag to say, okay, this person already have a kid. I don't want to do anything with them. But nowadays, it's not how many is how many you got, not if you got a kid. So if you meet someone, man or female, you meet a woman and she has 4 kids, 3 different dads, and you get her pregnant too, that's your fault. You can't say, "Oh, I can't believe this happened." What you saw the writing on the wall. Same thing, ladies. If you see a guy and he has 2, 3 kids, 3 different women, and you get pregnant by him, to me, that's where I say you got to hold yourself accountable because the writing's on the wall. You have to be able to look at that and ask yourself, "Am I going to be different if I get with this guy? Is he going to be with me? Are we gonna be a family, or is he gonna be just laying seeds around everywhere? So I think that's important. It sounds easy, but yeah, that's something going into relationships. You gotta ask yourself: Is that person marriage material, and are they parent worthy? Again, like you said earlier, Matt, there's no booklet on it, so you really won't. Honestly, I think you won't know until you actually have kids, because I think we sometimes think we got to figure it out. Jay never had kids, but he was a great uncle, and he was telling me that's why I ain't never having kids, man, because I see what you go through, little big bro. So some people can see from other people, not that he didn't want kids, he wanted kids, but just unfortunately never happened for him. Mm-hmm. But he was smart enough not to just go get any woman pregnant. And it'd be like, oops, damn, now I got to deal with baby mama. So that's what I mean about that. That some people out there have the capability to look and be like, nah, she cool, but nah, we ain't going that route. So I believe that that's important. We have to be able to evaluate and be true and honest to ourselves, both men and women on that.
Okay, good stuff. So I'm on cover the next two because we have to wrap this up. So the next two is legal considerations and parenting skills and knowledge. So with the legal one, that's kind of what you touched on. And that's just knowing beforehand, okay, so if I meet this person and we don't make it, child support, how is that going to look? So all this stuff, just like the 12 laws of the universe, everything go hand in hand and they all work together. They all link together. So if you don't choose the right partner, then later on in life, like both you and I went through, we had to deal with child support. Not only does it handicap actually handicaps both parents because depending on, what type of incomes or, occupations they had, it could limit as far as what the child is receiving. So that's another thing that has to be taken in consideration is the legal aspect. That definitely can be taught. That can be a requirement. That's put out long before you even have children. Knowing the repercussions if it doesn't work out with your significant other, what can happen. Okay. And then the next one is parenting skills and knowledge. Now, it's beneficial to have basic understanding knowledge of child development. Now, that part I do agree with. I feel as though um, we can learn how to raise children based off of child development. It's called human span life and development. And I learned this and I actually tried this experiment with mine and it worked. So our brain grows at different levels. You know, when we was infants to young children to adolescents, I mean to teenagers and adolescents, so forth. So if a parent don't know the span of the human life development, how the brain develops as they get older, you're treating that child a certain type of way and they're not ready for that. You know what I mean? So in that sense, you can actually become a good parent based off of that if you understand and understand how human lifespan development processes or progresses. So that's something that can be taught. And that's definitely a requirement that somebody can actually take a test. Okay, this is how it works. This is how I should be treating my child at, you know, a certain age or so forth. So that part I do feel as though it can be enforced. And to me, that's one of the biggest problems is so many people don't know how the brain develops. So they're treating a 12-year-old like a 6-year-old, or they're treating a 18-year-old like a 6-year-old. And that always comes back for me with so many young adults. They're not able to provide for themselves and make a living is because they weren't raised the proper way. And so they're basically 19, 20-year-olds with a 12, 13-year-old mentality and standards and stuff like that. So if that stuff is actually taught, then they can progress through their life, you know, through those stages, and actually it can be a pretty productive parent.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. So what I'm saying about to say, I don't want to come across as I'm trying to debate with you on this one. Because I agree what you said, the child development of the brain and when the because it's funny, and I know I'm guilty of it. I think it's a lot of parents that are. Some may not acknowledge it. But I think we tend to know that, but we just don't imply it. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes we get out on kids and make them be grown when they don't supposed to be grown, and then we want them to be kids, and we get mad when they being kids.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. The parents don't, or they, like I said, they realize it, but they just ignoring it because. And I'm guilty. I just had my grandson here last week, and he was being playful and running around. And I got him like, "Damn it, Hakeem, what are you doing? Go sit." And I kind of raised my voice, and he looked at me like, "Fool, I'm just playing." So I had to stop and think he's being a kid. So why am I trying to make him become an adult and do something like he's 20 years old? So you're right. So when he's 12, yeah, he should be a little bit more, have more responsibility, but you don't want to be treating him like a little baby. Come here, and you're doing too much. So I think we are guilty of that. And like you said, I don't know if we don't know it or it's just some parents just ignore it and just at the certain situation they reacting to that situation because I think we all are guilty of that, of making our kids do stuff at certain times and we get mad at them for being a kid. And then when they being a kid, we want them to be adults. So I think that's important. That's a really good point. I'm glad you put that out there because I think that's important. We tend to do it the wrong way. Now, again, I think that's learning on the fly with your first kid. To me, you got 4 kids, you already should have figured it out. You don't have, you had 4 or 5 kids, you still doing that, there's something wrong. Definitely. 1 kid, I get it. If you're first, it's a learning experience. 2, you should already have that idea. 3, you should be no excuse. It should be
But what
no
if they
excuse.
all bunched up together? Still learning.
Well, yeah. Well, Keisha and Deanna was like that. So I'm speaking from experience that yeah, it will take a while because they 9 months apart. So you're right. When they that close, yeah. When I'm like they're 4 or 5 years apart, to me, you should have had it figured out. But you're right. If they real bunched up, then you learning on the fly with all of them. That's a group thing right there. But yeah. But
Man,
no,
that's
that's a
funny.
good one. Yeah. But yeah, I think that is important is knowing how to interact with them at the right time, because that, you know, the way their brain is very important. But to me, I think that's stuff that we have to, again, sit down and evaluate with ourselves. Do anybody do that? I think we don't. I think, again, we have that mentality that, oh, I know how to do it. And I know a lot of people where they aunts and uncles and they don't have kids, so they think because they good with their nephews that they could be a great parent. And when they get a kid, it's like totally different. So I think that's dangerous too. You know,
Yeah.
so I know a lot of people like that where they don't have kids, but they deal with their nephews and nieces, so they think they'll be ready to be a parent. And some of them are. I'm not saying they're not, but some think that because of that reason that they got it figured out. And then you get them, it's like, damn, okay, why you like this when I was with my nephew? Because it's totally different when it's yours.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this out. So basically, the ultimate decision to become a parent is deeply personal, and it varies from person to person. Like I always say, it's relative. So it's important to be careful as far as to consider the factors, ensure that the person is ready and able to provide a loving, supportive environment for a child before embarking on the journey of becoming a parent. So that's just something that I thought about. You know, should there be a requirement or a law in place before we become parents? I thought it was an awesome conversation. I hope you guys that's watching it enjoyed it. As I always say, beautiful people, your thought becomes your belief, and your belief becomes your reality.
Yes,
Or you
sir.
create your reality.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna close with pretty much how I opened. So self-evaluation, be honest with yourself. I do believe, because the topic is, should it be requirements? It definitely should be. How is the next topic or podcast, figure that out. But it do need to be something instilled, because I think we are just too easy on having kids and not ready for it. That's someone else's life you're bringing into the world, and you should be a little bit more having it figured out before you go and take that next step. So that's definitely something that's going to be a work in progress, you know, but I think it's possible. Anything is possible. I believe that. So everybody just, you know, continue to stay STS, stay focused, trust your process, stay consistent. It was a good one. I liked it. There was so much more I wanted to say, but I know, you know, we only had an hour to do it, but definitely, guys, yeah. Do the right thing. Make good choices.
All
That's
right.
all I got. So,
All right. Y'all be good.
all right.
Peace.
Peace out.